Hello there and welcome to another edition of the Social Gambler Radio Hour. I'm John Arnette. Good to have you with us today. Beautiful Wednesday afternoon. St. Augustine, my sister actually having a baby as we speak right now there in Baptist South. Little Eloise set to come into the world, so I know she's not listening because, yeah, she has more important things going on, but just want to pass her on sort of some warm wishes here. Hope all is going well as we speak. See, I'm just so dedicated to this radio program that even births, funerals, they don't faze me. I'll be here. Like the Postal Service. Good to have you with us today. A lot to talk about with training camp starting tomorrow for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Sort of breaking Jaguar news. Shad Khan making some public statements, making some statements to the media just a couple hours ago. If you haven't heard those, bring them to you here in a second. Think you'll be very interested. First, we do have to tell you, we are brought to you by thesocialgambler.com. Your leader in free sports, picks, news, and reviews. Plenty of fresh, free content up on the Social Gambler again today. We'll get to some of it in the next segment. Video podcasts of this show can now be seen daily on thesocialgambler.com. Additionally, if you're not listening to us on ESPN 1420 St. Augustine Sports Leader, we can be heard via the Listen Live link on thesocialgambler.com or on 1420sports.com. No matter where you're listening to us, good to have you with us. 794-9001, the number if you'd like to join the program. Your calls are certainly always welcome. 794-9001. Training camp begins tomorrow. The 2012 NFL season, at least here in Northeast Florida, for some teams it began today. But around here it begins tomorrow with training camp for the Jacksonville Jaguars. For the first week and a half, most practices will be open to the public. Those practices starting at 8:30 in the morning. So if you've got, a free day, want to go down there, take your kids down there, whatever it may be, sure it's going to be warm. I'd prepare for some warm weather, but fans are welcome here for the first week and a half. Preseason starts on August 10th as the defending Super Bowl champion New York Giants come to town. Now, without a doubt, the biggest story heading into training camp, the biggest story here in Jacksonville is a negative story. The holdout of their best player, our best player, Maurice Jones-Drew. Head and shoulders our best player, especially on the offensive side of the ball, no question about it. Guy who led the league in rushing last year, arguably the very best running back in the NFL. It is official now. His holdout will begin tomorrow. He has notified the team apparently that he is not going to report to camp tomorrow. Now, it's been well documented on this show and around this area. He's unhappy with his contract. He's only due $4.5 million this year. About half of what guys like Matt Forte, LaShawn McCoy, D'Angelo Williams, half of what those guys are making, a third of what guys like Adrian Peterson, Chris Johnson are making. Now, Jones-Drew has made more money these last 3 years. Still has made less, by the way, than what all those five guys I just mentioned are making. But this was a front-loaded deal that he signed. Still, he's outperformed the deal. I don't think you get any argument from anybody about that. This guy has outperformed the deal. And he's sort of dug in. It appears as though he's dug in. He realizes that football is a business. Came out on NFL Network the other day and said this is the part of the NFL that is just as real as the games on Sunday. Jones-Drew is 27 years old, in the midst of his prime. When this current contract runs out, he will be 29. He knows that then he'll have significantly less bargaining power. I've been very public and very frank with my belief of what the Jaguars should do. I do not understand why they're not paying this man. If the goal is to win football games, you have $24 million of cap space. I mean, it's not even an issue. And for all the fans, there are lots of them in this area. I'd say most of them. For all you fans who say that Maurice Jones-Drew's in the wrong here, and hey, why don't he just play for the contract that he signed? He's under contract. Why don't he just... What do you care? I don't understand why any fan would not want to for them to just pay Maurice Jones-Drew to get him out on the field. The Jags have so much salary cap space, they're not going to spend to the cap this year. So it's not like giving Maurice Jones-Drew more money would cost them in any way. It's not like they'd have to make room for that more money. It's not like they're strapped, salary cap-wise. They wouldn't have to release a player or nothing. It would just be a small, emphasis on small dent out of Shad Khan's wallet. And you say, you say small, couple of $1 million. Well, when you're a billionaire, a billion, you know what that is? That's 1,000 millions. That's a lot of money. When you're a billionaire, it means you're worth more than $1 billion. So $2 million to a billionaire, I know to us, that's more than we'll make if you combine the next decades of earnings. To a lot of us, anyway. But that's literally the equivalent of, to Shad Khan, that's the equivalent of $20 out of our back pocket. What do we care? Shad Khan makes more money than that in interest every year. What do we care if Shad Khan pays an extra couple of $1 million for Maurice Jones-Drew? We as Jaguar fans should just care about seeing the best players out on the field. Give us our best chance of winning. That hasn't really been the attitude around town. Gene Smith really sticking to his guns here. I understand why, Again, I'm sure he's patting himself on the back, thinking, what a shrewd deal here. We've got the best running back in the league these next couple of years, playing for $4.5 million. Well, it appears as though Gene Smith's way of thinking, or maybe I shouldn't put it on Gene Smith, but we know he's the guy who's responsible for, he's the general manager. He's the guy responsible for having these guys under contract. He's the guy ultimately responsible for the product that goes out on the field on Sundays. But his way of thinking appears to be shared by Shad Khan. Within the last 2 hours, Shad Khan made these comments to the Florida Times-Union. He reiterated there would be no new contract for Maurice Jones-Drew. He said, I quote, "It's his choice. There's been very little for us to do other than wait on whatever he might choose to do." Khan continues, quote, "There's more than 50 players under contract. There are other people under contract in management, coaches. Does that mean if you do it for one, you do it for everybody? Where do you draw the line?" End quote. So that is Shad Khan sort of giving his reasons for not paying Maurice Jones-Drew what he's worth. And what I say to that is obviously, listen, I understand where Shad Khan's coming from here, but to compare Maurice Jones-Drew, to say there are 50 players under contract, and to say this guy is just another player, that is someone who either hasn't watched the Jaguars or is unaware of what's going on the football side of things. Maurice Jones-Drew is the most indispensable member of the Jaguars. If you don't believe me, watch some of the tape for the last couple of years. Jaguar fans, how many games have we watched? Just pathetic, brutal offense when Maurice Jones-Drew is just doing great things, even if it's a hard-nosed 4 or 5 yard run, breaking tackles. And we've looked at each other and said, at least there's one guy out there. We have one great player on our team. He's been that guy. A literal one-man show. And who knows how good he would be if there was a threat of them moving the ball through the air. If they had quarterback play that wasn't the absolute worst in the league. Who knows what sort of havoc he could wreak in that situation. So, here we have a guy, Shad Khan, there's more than 50 players under contract. Just about everybody on the Jaguars roster, I'm not exaggerating, with the exception of about 5 guys. Everybody is replaceable, completely replaceable. Blaine Gabbert, first-round draft pick, 100% replaceable. What I mean by that is there is a number of guys around the NFL right now, backup guys who are still unsigned, guys who you could take Blaine Gabbert out of the Jaguars lineup, plug player X in there this season, and they could give you about what Blaine Gabbert gives you. A totally replaceable guy. And the Jaguars, as many 5-11 teams are, their roster is full of totally replaceable guys. Full of them. Even the guy you might think, Tyson Alualu, another top 10 pick. You don't think that guy's replaceable? The only the only defensive tackle you'll ever see drafted in the first half of the first round who does not command one single double team throughout the game. The guy playing right beside him, Terrence Knighton, pot roast, is the man who eats up those double teams. So, highly drafted guys who are popular in this community, some of them completely replaceable. Maurice Jones-Drew, not replaceable. If you think Rashad Jennings is going to come in and give you even close to a semblance of what Maurice Jones-Drew, you will be sadly mistaken. Rashad Jennings is an average-type NFL running back, not an impact playmaker. Maurice Jones-Drew is an impact playmaker. And, I'm sorry, I'm disturbed as a Jaguar fan. I woke up this morning. I didn't even hear this Shad Khan news, because this is just broken in the last couple hours. Shad Khan publicly saying Maurice Jones-Drew would not get another contract, placing the burden back on Maurice Jones-Drew. So, it's his choice. There's little for us to do, whatever he might choose to do. That sounds strikingly similar to what Shad Khan said about another player who's very popular in this area, that being Tim Tebow, when the Jaguars chose not to give up a third-round draft choice to acquire Tim Tebow. A third-round draft choice they eventually used on a punter, who, by the way, agreed to terms today. Brian Anger will be reporting to training camp tomorrow. But, the Jags would not do any more than match what the Jets did and then, try to leave it to Tebow. We all know the story, or we all know what's been reported. Tebow's people saying just wanted to go to a place he felt wanted, never was contacted by the Jaguars coaches or management. Jets assuring him that he was going to play, which we're actually going to talk a little Tim Tebow today. Heard some interesting things this morning. I want to talk about just where Tim Tebow will play and how much he's going to play, but in Maurice Jones-Drew and Tim Tebow, you have two guys who are wildly popular in this community. One guy because he's played professional football here. The other guy because born and raised here, still speaks extremely highly of the area, still lives here, still chooses to inject money into the area. His foundation does a lot of things in the area, hosts his charity golf tournament here. So those are two guys who are very popular in the area. Shad Khan, people in Northeast Florida are trying to embrace Shad Khan. Everybody has tried as hard as they can since the ownership transition was announced. Am I wrong? Local fans, local media, we're trying to like Shad Khan. I'm among them. Have you heard me say negative things about Shad Khan on this show? We are trying to like Shad Khan. We're hoping that this guy is, who he says he is, and he'll be good for the long-term future of Jacksonville. But the fact of the matter is, he has no ties to this area. He's invested a whole lot less in this area than Maurice Jones-Drew and Tim Tebow. We know this guy's a pragmatic businessman. We know he's not going to be sentimental about this whole thing. So who knows what his eventual plans are. I just don't like him to see. I felt like he did it a little bit with the Tim Tebow situation a couple months ago. Didn't really call him on it because, like I said, I'm trying to like Shad Khan. I'm trying not to. My vote's been cast on Gene Smith. I've said many times on this show, I sincerely hope I'm wrong. If the Jaguars win 12 games this year, I will come on this radio program and tell you, hey, that's why Gene Smith gets paid $1 million a year and I host this AM radio program. I will admit I'm wrong with a smile on my face. I don't believe I will be wrong. I think it's unconscionable that a guy who, under his watch, the team has steadily gotten worse, was given a 3-year extension, and then you expect fans to be excited about the direction of the team? That's ridiculous. But Shad Khan, I haven't grouped him in with that. Even though I did feel like in the Tebow situation, he sort of tried to paint Tebow out to be the bad guy. Oh, he doesn't want to come here. And we're sitting here as fans saying, wait a second. Here's a guy who, with his fame and fortune, he could live anywhere in the world. Most athletes given that kind of choice, like Peyton Manning, for example, lives in South Beach in the offseason. Hey, I love this area. I was born and raised in the Jacksonville area, but it's not the very nicest area in the world. I don't know. If you gave me $10 million, I'm not sure I'd live here anymore. I don't know. Would you? I don't know. Tim Tebow does. He chooses to make his home here. So when ownership or management sort of tries to paint him out of he didn't want to come here, you say, wait a second. Well, why would that be? It must be on the football side of things because we know in his free time he sure wants to come here. Maurice Jones-Drew's another guy. Has a lot of fans in this area because he's given his heart and soul to the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is a guy who has not complained, did not complain when he shared time with Fred Taylor, even though it was clear at the end of that arrangement that Jones-Drew, even though he wasn't the one who was technically starting at the time, he had sort of surpassed Taylor. Very good teammate in that regard. This guy has kept playing hard on some terrible teams. This is a guy who's burned out the prime of his career on a terrible team. He's still in the prime of his career. He's ready to win games, going to do everything he can to win these games. And now we have the owner today saying, well, it's his, painting him out to be the bad guy. Is he the bad guy? No, he's not. It's probably... The Josh Scobie situation was mishandled as well. They ended up getting Scobie signed, but not before Scobie publicly said to the media, they haven't talked to me in months. I don't know what's going on here. So, how this should have been done, and, in my opinion, how a class organization, I think, would have handled this, was before it even became an issue. As soon as last season was over, when Jones-Drew led the league in rushing, when it's clear that he's not slowing down, he leads the league in rushing, he should have restructured his deal then. And again, it's not like it seems like I say this every day. This isn't Major League Baseball. This isn't the NBA. It's not like you'd be really crippling your franchise in the long term. It's not like you could sign him some 5-year deal and you'd have to be paying him all these millions of dollars when he's 31. No. Because in the NFL, you can cut players at any time. You don't owe them the rest of what's on their contract. Which is why it's totally fair and reasonable for Jones-Drew to be doing what he's doing. And for anybody to say, well, I sign a contract, you sign a contract, mine and your jobs, the normal person's job, is not like Maurice Jones-Drew's job. There isn't collective bargaining that goes on. If most people are fired, there's some sort of severance package. It's written into their contract. All I'm saying, and then I get up this morning. This is what I was going to say, because I went off. I was going to sort of start it with this, but then with Shad Khan's public statements a couple hours ago, felt I should lead with that. But I woke up this morning and I saw on 2 different news sites, one local, one national, something that I had never seen before. And let me tell you, when you have two separate news organizations, completely separate, 2 completely separate guys posting nearly simultaneously, as they did, ESPN and the Florida Times-Union, this was not a situation where one posted it and then several hours later the other sort of saw the news there and then posted it. These things were posted nearly the same time. ESPN.com and the Florida Times-Union both ran things mentioning Maurice Jones-Drew and trade. The Jags may look to trade Maurice Jones-Drew. I guess that's a better option than him sitting out the entire season, but short of that, if you're the worst offense in the league, if you're trading your best player, a guy who is, from all accounts, anything but a problem in the locker room, a guy who's given you his all every game throughout the years, and it's not like we're talking about a guy who's past his prime. That's another thing. So on the Times-Union, whoever this editor is who wrote this says, oh, well, I think Maurice Jones-Drew's best days are behind him. Well, that's nice. Remember when you were 27? Did it feel like your best days are behind you? I don't think so. This is not a guy who's 31 years old. This is a guy who has 2-3 more seasons at his very peak. Just look at the history of NFL running backs. People are like, well, if you look at the history of NFL running backs, yeah, look at it. Those running backs, they don't start going sour. Their stats don't start declining until they hit 29 or 30. When they're 27, 28, and in most cases 29, these guys are, that's their prime of their career, numbers-wise. In my opinion, it would be disastrous to trade Maurice Jones-Drew. And when I see that stuff being speculated on anyway in the Times-Union and then being reported on ESPN.com, makes me extremely concerned as a Jags fan. And another thing to keep in mind here, something that I haven't heard talked about yet, but it should be. If you're a free agent in the NFL, would you want to come to Jacksonville? If this is the way they sort of take care of their players, nobody can have a better start to their career than Maurice Jones-Drew. This guy was drafted by Jacksonville. This guy, he was not a starter right off, but has defined productivity his entire tenure, capped off by winning the rushing title last year on a team that was last in the league in passing, which is remarkable, again, because everybody knew the ball was coming to Jones-Drew. I knew it, you knew it, the defense knew he was getting it 20 times a game. So, if that guy doesn't get taken care of, if the franchise is prepared to let that guy go into this season when he's 27 years old in the midst of his prime, and they're prepared to pay him half of what sort of mid-upper level NFL, I'm talking that LaShawn McCoy, D'Angelo Williams, Matt Forte, Ray Rice tier, you're prepared to pay him half of that and 1/3 of what Adrian Peterson and Chris Johnson make? If you're an NFL free agent, why in the world would you want to play for that franchise? I'm sorry. It's not like guys are tripping over themselves to come to Jacksonville anyway. really off the NFL radar from a national perspective. If you're not going to pay him on top of that, who are you going to get? Laurent Robinson? I mean, is that going to be your big free agent? I mean, hey, I hope Laurent Robinson works out well. And I was behind his acquisition because the Jaguars had the worst wide receiving core in the league last year. So I thought it was a good acquisition. I think he's going to be an upgrade over what they had before, the Jarrett Dillard and Cecil Shorts of the world. But again, the guy's 5 different teams. Never been more than a number 3 receiver on any team. I mean, you hope that you can attract bigger time free agents than Laurent Robinson. Can they possibly? And to me, you know, this Maurice Jones-Drew situation, I mean, it stretches far beyond, you know, just it's a simple, well, Maurice Jones-Drew needs to play out his contract, and, well, the Jags are doing the right thing. It's not like that at all. This is really sending the wrong kind of message about the type of organization the Jaguars are. If you don't take care of the guy who, I mean, to say he's your guy, I mean, could there be anybody who's more your guy than Maurice Jones-Drew? By far the most visible player on the team. By far the most recognizable player on the team. By far the best player on the team. Anyway, got to go to a break now. 794-9001, the number if you'd like to get in on the other side. I'm John Arnette, and this is the Social Gambler Radio Hour.
Nothing says love like Italian food, so don't take her to a generic big chain Italian.
Welcome back to the Social Gambler Radio Hour. I'm John Arnette. Good to have you with us today. Beautiful Wednesday afternoon here in Northeast Florida. 794-9001, the number if you'd like to join the program. Your calls are always welcome at 794-9001. We are brought to you by thesocialgambler.com, your leader in free sports picks, news, and reviews. A reminder, everything on the Social Gambler is entirely free, and they're also an app for your smartphone. So be sure to check them out. We are going to go to the phones now. We have Mousy on the line.
Yeah, how's
Mousy,
it going, man?
pretty good. How are you, my friend?
Okay. Shad Khan is making the same mistakes that a lot of our presidents have made. We lost Vietnam because Lyndon Johnson wouldn't let the generals fight the war. I was in the Air Force during Vietnam, and I was at Mission Control, and I could see stuff that Lyndon Johnson was doing. He just, you know, he wanted to fight the war. He wouldn't let the generals do it. And that's what Shad Khan's doing. He's, because he put all his money in there, he thinks he can, that he knows better about what players and so on and so forth. And as far as selling out the stadium, you've got to be proud of the town that the team is in. And there's nothing to be proud about Jacksonville. I think I've told you that before. It's dirty. The people drive crazy.
People drive crazy.
Laying off about a fourth of the police department. There's nothing to be proud about Jacksonville.
Well, you know, Mousy, I mean, you know, I listen, Jacksonville, I'm born and raised in Jacksonville. There are parts of Jacksonville that are not nice. There are parts of Jacksonville that I would not want to live. Jacksonville's a big enough city. There are also parts that are quite nice. But I understand your opinion is shared by some folks, not only in this area, but, you know, around the country. I've met people say, Jacksonville. But, you know, it's like any other city. It has its strengths and weaknesses.
Well, sort of, you know.
Okay.
You know, that's just, I've got some insiders in Jacksonville. I'm in the petty politics and some gimmicks that are going on. I've got one guy that swears that Jags are going to Los Angeles. I mean, this guy swears to it. He says, I know it. He said, I get around that town often enough every day. That's just what's going to happen. And do you think they can make a quarterback out of Gabbert? I mean, really, you know?
Well, You know, Mousy, I mean, my opinion, I think the jury's out on Gabbert. I am very concerned after seeing what we saw last year. And I've heard people say, well, it seems like that would have showed up in college, sort of his cowardice in the pocket and the fact that he seems to notice the rush. When you watch Missouri play, they're out of the shotgun nearly all the time, and the quarterback and Gary Pinkel's offense really gets rid of the ball in a hurry. So I'm not sure Gabbert in the Big 12 really faced a whole lot of what he faced last year, and I'm not sure you can teach courage. Now, easy for me to say, sitting here in a radio station, I'd probably be doing the same thing Gabbert would be doing if I had 250-pound guys bearing down on me like that. But I'm not paid millions of dollars to stand in there. I wasn't picked 10th overall. Now, in terms of what you say about Shad Khan not letting his generals fight the war, that might be true. I think another part of the problem here in terms of Shad Khan is not hiring, or more specifically firing, the right generals. Extending Gene Smith when he took over, under Gene Smith's tenure these last 3 years, he's been in charge of the Jaguars. They have declined. They have become a worse team, culminated in their 5-11 record last year, worst offense in the league. So how that guy earns an extension is beyond me. Now, apart from that, if Gabbert turns out to be a top 10 type guy, if Gabbert turns out to be the guy that Gene Smith apparently thinks he is, then maybe I'll look like an idiot here in a few months, and I'll be happy to be that idiot, because I've said before, I'm not objective on this. I am a Jaguars fan. I do plan on raising my family in Northeast Florida, so I have a vested interest in football in this area for decades. So I'm genuinely hoping I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, when they didn't hire Tebow, draft Tebow or whatever, that blew it for a lot of people. I mean, Tebow's got he's got some growing up to do. His way of thinking, the team is going to have to learn his way of throwing the ball and his way of finding guys. But when they didn't hire Tebow, a local hero, they could have filled that stadium just for people that wanted to see what Tebow looks like in real life. You know what I mean?
Well, for what it's worth, Mousy, I totally agree with you on the effect that Tim Tebow would have on ticket sales. Now, in terms of Tim Tebow now and his current teammates, I'm not sure how much he's going to be throwing the ball up there in New York unless they get off to a bad start to the season and they put him in there. I believe Tebow would have had a huge effect on ticket sales in this area. And for what it's worth, I've also said on this program last year, because a lot of back, around the time of the draft a couple of years ago when they passed on him, a lot of people said, well, yeah, it would have been good for a marketing gimmick, but would it be good on the football field? Well, last year, if you compare him to Blaine Gabbert anyway, I mean, he was a better football player than Blaine Gabbert. So if you take last year into consideration, then it sure looks like it would be smart from a marketing and football perspective. But obviously, Gene Smith, he would have had to really, really swallow his pride there, especially if Tebow had been brought in here and Gabbert had been shipped out, which I and a lot of other people believe would have had to happen. The screams to play Tebow would have been too much. Bringing him here as a third-string quarterback and a special teams player, which is apparently what they were intending on, would not have worked in the long term. But yeah, hey, Mousy, I think you're right about them sort of missing on that Tim Tebow opportunity. But that's done now, and hopefully we can move on with the team we have and win some games and fill that stadium. I hope so.
Yeah. Hey, I got a quick race for you if you're going to be off by 5:30 this afternoon.
Go ahead, give it to me, man.
Okay. 5:30 this afternoon, Eastern Time, Saratoga, race 9. And I'll give you the numbers real quick.
Go ahead.
2, 3, 6, long shot 4.
So that's at 5:30 post today, race 9 in Saratoga. 2, 3, 6 with the long shot of the 4. Right.
Now, my last one I gave you, my long shot, my long shots usually come in. I'm not going to say this one is. I can't, But I have a mailing list, and this guy keeps saying, why don't you play your long shots? Well, I wrote him back. I do play my long shots because usually my long shots come in before, today it might be 6-4 or something. I don't know. But, that's, if, anybody that's going to be home by 5:30 and has HRTV or TVG and wants to go, I don't have a horse site, Twin Spires. I do all my horse betting on Twin Spires, twinspires.com. And, but I've got, Intertops. I do my poker, and when football starts, I'm going to be doing it on Intertops. And you can go to my site and sign up for Intertops.
All right, Mousy, well, we appreciate the call. We do know your site is mousiesplace.com. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, appreciate it.
All right. Hey, thanks for the call, buddy.
Okay, sure enough. Good luck now.
All right. Mousy always calls in with the horse tips. We appreciate the call. Do have another caller on the line now. Who we got, Pete? Eric. Got Eric on the line. Eric, you're on the Social Gambler Radio Hour. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, thanks, John. Just, I'm real concerned about this Jones-Drew situation also. I feel like, in order to help Blaine Gabbert along, we need to get him signed, or they're just going to be not respecting the run and teeing off on him every game. Do you agree with that, or they'll look at it from that angle?
Well, I'll tell you what. I think that after what happened last year, after the film that everybody has on Blaine Gabbert, you can rest assured, defense coordinators, they're going to be teeing off on Blaine Gabbert regardless. Blaine Gabbert is going to see the kitchen sink in terms of blitzes this year, and he better be ready for it. Now, no question that not having Jones-Drew in there, I mean, that's got to be crippling for Gabbert. I mean, he always had this. I mean, last year, to have the leading rusher in the league behind you, I mean, that's something. That is a legitimate threat the defenses have to respect, and Rashad Jennings just isn't that guy. Defenses just aren't going to respect him unless he earns it. The Jones-Drew situation to me is it's not good for anybody involved. And for the life of me, I don't understand, first, why they're not paying him. And second, I really don't understand why Jaguar fans are behind the decision not to pay him. It's like, oh, well, yeah, he should play out of. What difference does it make to you, buddy? Like I said, it's not like they're pushing the limits of the salary cap. There's plenty of space to give him more money. You wouldn't have to do anything differently. It would just be a little bit more money out of Shad Khan's pocket. And believe me, Shad Khan does not need your tears of sympathy. This guy makes plenty of money. As fans, we should want to see Maurice Jones-Drew happy and taken care of and on the field.
Is Jones-Drew talking at all? Has he said much, or is he staying pretty quiet right now?
Well, I heard him say on NFL Network a couple of days ago, made reference to this situation and says this is the part of the NFL that is every bit as real as what goes on Sunday. So, I mean, Jones-Drew, he makes no secret of it. He's a businessman, and he knows the deal. NFL contracts, to everybody who keeps saying he's under contract, he's under contract. We can't say that because NFL contracts don't work like contracts in almost any other job or even any other professional sport due to their non-guaranteed nature, due to the fact that somebody can sign a 4-year, $40 million deal, and the only thing that's actually guaranteed is that first-year salary, plus any signing bonus they might receive. I mean, if you a catastrophic injury or whatever, a team can cut you and not owe you the rest of what's on that deal. So the contract is not binding in the team's direction. So if I'm a player like Maurice Jones-Drew, of course you've got to be like, well, wait a second. If I underperform, you're going to cut me and not pay me. So if I far outperform my contract, how come I can't get a pay raise, a little more money? Especially, I mean, it just galls him to see a guy like Laurent Robinson coming in here, and he'll be making more money than Jones-Drew this year. That almost seems ridiculous. That a guy who's been a journeyman wide receiver in the NFL on his 5th team or whatever is going to be making more money than the guy who's the face of the franchise, sweat, blood, and tears, and the rest, he's laid out for the team, who's still in the prime of his career. I mean, I totally see where Jones-Drew is coming from here, and it really puzzles me when I see so many fans say, and I've heard a lot of my friends, I've heard a lot of people like that say, oh, well, Jones-Drew's being a baby, he should shut his mouth and get in here and play. Come on, man. I mean, really? That's just not the way I feel about the situation.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think the success this year is on his legs, not Gabbert's arms, so hopefully they'll figure that out.
Yeah, I hope so too, Eric. And hey, man, I do appreciate the call.
Thanks a lot for the show.
Yeah. Hey, if they're going to have success this year, certainly a lot of it is going to depend on the legs of Maurice Jones-Drew. I know there's a thought around the NFL. Even now, I saw Peter King say it about a month ago, and Peter King's, about as respected, I guess, as they come in terms of NFL writers, says something to the effect of running the football's dead, or it's a passing league now and all that. I just think all that is a bunch of garbage. I really do. I don't think playing defense and running the football are any less important now than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 20 years ago. And if you want proof, I say look no further than last season. Last season, when all kinds of passing records were being broken. Last season, when everyone is saying, oh, the new NFL is here, running game is irrelevant. You look at the NFC and AFC championship games, and you have two teams within a whisker of advancing to the Super Bowl. I mean, in Baltimore's case, you could say they were unlucky. You look at the Baltimore Ravens, the San Francisco 49ers, and you have old-school traditional teams built behind a power running game and a good defense. Quarterbacks who are game managers, Alex Smith, Joe Flacco. Flacco had a nice game in that AFC title game. They would have won if Lee Evans had hung on to that pass. So a lot of people sort of forget just how bad Flacco was a couple of the weeks prior to that. So the Ravens were able to advance in the playoffs despite their quarterback play. Alex Smith played a lot better last year, but he was only throwing it about 20 times a game. The 49ers offense was way scaled down in terms of the passing game compared to what they had done in years past. And it worked. So if Gabbert could have just not been so bad last year, if he could have been an Alex Smith, and I know, even though the 49ers didn't have the greatest receiving core either, I know they had a better receiving core than Jacksonville. But if the Jaguars got more competent quarterback play last year, with the running game they had and the defense they had, I think that could be a playoff formula. You can't have a quarterback that turns the ball over. You can't have a quarterback who is 34th in the league in passer rating, even though there are only 32 teams, obviously. Quarterbacking is important, but I by no means do I believe is the running game dead in the NFL or any of that. And yeah, if the Jaguars are planning on pinning all their hopes to, Blaine Gabbert and Mike Mularkey's new offense, they might be in serious trouble. Because I got news for you, folks. Mike Mularkey's offense, it's not like they're bells and whistles or anything anybody hadn't seen before. Mike Mularkey is a very traditional NFL-type play caller. When you look at the Falcons over the last few years, they were no frills. It's not like there's a team like the Saints that spread it out and were exciting to watch. They threw it down the field some. They ran the ball plenty. They had weapons like we only dream of here in Jacksonville, aside from Jones-Drew, who's a little better than Michael Turner. The weapons the Falcons had at receiver and quarterback, a clear upgrade to what we have right now in Jacksonville. We certainly hope Justin Blackmon will develop into a Roddy White-type guy. Anyway, we shall see how it all shakes out. I do believe it's going to be critical to any success the Jaguars may have that Jones-Drew is on the field. And hey, he's got to be in camp at least enough time to learn the plays. New playbook this season. Anyway, got to go to a quick break now. 794-9001, the number if you'd like to get in on the other side. I'm John Arnette, and this is the Social Gambler Radio Hour.
Are you a do-it-yourself web enthusiast? If so,
Welcome back to the Social Gambler Radio Hour. Pete taking a call on the bat phone in there. We do have a phone that only rings in case of nuclear emergency or something of that nature.
Never heard that phone ring before in my life.
No?
I don't know where that call came from. That's very strange.
Anyway, don't even know the number to that phone, but 794-9001, the number if you'd like to ring the conventional phones. Speak to Pete Melfi and then join the program here. And I am John Arnette. This is the Social Gambler Radio Hour. We are brought to you by thesocialgambler.com, your leader in free sports picks, news, and reviews. Not only are there things like free picks and news stories on the Social Gambler, but entertaining, sometimes humorous things. Something that caught my eye. I hadn't heard this story. Some site called sportsbettingonline.ag actually refunded the losses of any bettor who lost on Adam Scott in the British Open. That's right, we talked about on Monday Adam Scott's historic collapse in the British Open, giving away 4 shots over the final 4 holes. Well, that was obviously heartbreaking for anybody who would bet on Scott, particularly anybody who would bet on him at 40-1, which were the odds on Sports Betting AG when the tournament began, but apparently they refunded everybody's ticket. Now, I'm sure it's still a little sad. You thought you were about to, say you bought a $100 ticket at 40-1, you thought you were about to make $4,000, and now they tell you, oh, we'll give you your $100 back. You say, hey, thanks. Now, call me cynical if you want, but I'm not sure they're just doing this for the good of their fellow man. I'm guessing they had little or no action on Adam Scott. And so they're doing this for a little publicity stunt, but hey, it's working. Read it on thesocialgambler.com. I'm putting it out here right now to you guys. sportsbettingonline.ag. What's with these .ag sites, Pete? Seeing these spring up now. Don't really know what that is.
I've honestly never heard of a .ag site.
No, well,
This
I guess
is news to
I'm
me.
more with it than you then.
You definitely are.
I'm a step ahead in the technology department.
Won't argue with you there, buddy. That's all right.
Of course, I can't make a decent promo, can I? Still haven't got any assistance with that. Pete has all these fancy promos. Sounds like they're made in a Hollywood studio. I've still been using the same promo on this station. Sounds like I'm reading off a cue card.
You just got to give me some material, man. Give me a script, and we will make you the most amazing commercial this station has ever heard.
You know I don't work well with a script. You know how I do on this show, a free flow of ideas.
Give me some of the podcasts that you can find right there at the Social Gambler.
Oh, there you go. Pete throwing in a plug for the Social Gambler. I notice on his show, he resists doing that at all costs. I've heard him say, I produce this other show.
No, man, I always shout out the Social Gambler. I always shout out the Social Gambler. Even the time. I'm good about that.
Just twisting the knife there a little bit with Pete.
That means you got to give me a promo right now.
Pete's Bargain Hunter Radio Hour. Every day at 11 a.m., I believe. He's the best auction host on the station. I do believe he's the only auction host on the station, and I do believe he's muscled out some previous auction hosts.
We won't talk about that.
Yeah, but that's with good reason. Cream rises to the top. Take that, previous auction host. Anyway, if you'd like to speak to Pete Melfi in the flesh, or at least over the phone, 794-9001 is how you do that. And folks, I've told you before, you can get all your free advice at the Social Gambler. The only place here in Northeast Florida you can legally act on that advice, the only legal sports book and full Vegas-style casino in the area is the Jacks Are Better Casino, which is, of course, the casino ship sells 9 times weekly, every day but Tuesday, out of Mayport. Full Vegas action at the Jacks Are Better. They've got a non-smoking level, a smoking level, their outdoor area up top. And anytime you go out there to the Jacks Are Better, they will give you free money. That's right, they'll give you $10 you can use same as cash anywhere in the casino, a free bet if you just mention this radio show. All you have to do is mention at reservations the Social Gambler Radio Hour and watch them hand you money. Folks, there is no better deal than that. That's not 25% off something you buy. That's them giving you money. Pay them a visit out at the Jacks Are Better. Be sure to mention this radio show, the Social Gambler Radio Hour. It's been sort of an all-NFL show today, and it should be, with training camps around the league opening this week, including right here in Northeast Florida, in Jacksonville. And we always say right here in Jacksonville. We are in St. Augustine. I think our listenership knows that. Training camp beginning in Jacksonville tomorrow. Mentioned earlier on the show, third-round punter Brian Anger signed to a contract. Anger, the highest drafted punter in over a decade. It's a frustrating subject to start talking about. The Jags drafted a punter a few years ago, Adam Podlish, who appeared to work out, yet they wouldn't pay him when it came time to be paid before last season. So he went on, signed with the Chicago Bears, did quite well there. They also had another punter after that on the roster who, I don't know, won the Super Bowl with the New York Giants. Had a punter they picked up off the street who did a fine job last year, yet they still drafted a punter in the third round this past offseason. No telling whether or not they'll pay him in 3 or 4 years like they wouldn't pay Podlish. Salt in the wound to many Jaguar fans or many football fans in this area is the fact that Denver made it public that they would have taken that pick in exchange for Tim Tebow, who was born and raised in this area, played his high school football here, won the Heisman down the road at Florida, still tremendously popular here in Northeast Florida. And perfect segue, because, listen, there's new Tim Tebow news every single day now. He plays in New York. There's so much media up there. You know, there's stories on what color underwear Tim Tebow wore today, literally every day in the New York Daily News, New York Post, things like that. For the last few months, I really haven't talked about him. There hasn't been a daily Tebow or daily Jets update on this show like there has been on a lot of national shows. However, I saw something today that I felt was worth mentioning. Jets assistant special teams coach Ben Kotwika told the New York Daily News that Tim Tebow will be used this year, he thinks, part-time on kickoff coverage and kickoff returns. That means he'll be running down, making the tackle on kickoff coverage, and blocking on kickoff returns. Let me go back and remind people again what an unprecedented situation this is. Never before in NFL history, never before this case, ever in NFL history, had a quarterback ever won a playoff game in his first or second year in the league as a starting quarterback, won a playoff game, and then was playing for a different team the following year. That has never happened before. Now, not only has it happened, but that quarterback is going to be used, in addition to being the backup quarterback, who's going to come in there situationally, apparently, going to be used on the punt team, on the kickoff team. When has this ever happened before in NFL history? I mean, this is unbelievable. It's unprecedented. And it's not like Tim Tebow is the only player who's ever been able to play multiple positions. Plenty of athletic guys at quarterback. You don't think Michael Vick could play a few positions? You don't think he could be gunner on the punt team or return punts? A guy like Vince Young with size and speed. I mean, there are plenty of athletic quarterbacks. And I'm sure Tim Tebow could do all of these jobs well. My question is, I mean, you're not keeping a guy, if indeed he is your, and he's their only option at backup aside from Greg McElroy, who's still sort of a project. If he's your only option at backup, are you not worried about him getting hurt? Are you not worried about injury? I mean, teams are hyper-conscious about that type of thing. And on that note, CBS Sports' Mike Freeman sent out a tweet today saying that he talked to a special teams player, a guy who plays special teams currently in the NFL, who wishes to remain anonymous. And this anonymous special teams player told Mike Freeman, quote, "If he plays on special teams, there will be 100 guys looking to knock that pretty boy's block off." End quote. I'm sure to a degree that's true. I'm sure all these guys will want to get on SportsCenter as the guy who leveled Tim Tebow. You know, it'll be a highlight. However, I'll advise this anonymous, I notice he chose to remain anonymous saying this, I'll advise this anonymous special teamer and all the other special teamers in the NFL, think about this, be careful what you wish for. There is not many more physical players in the league at any position than Tim Tebow. This is a guy who looks up contact. Remember last year in the Monday night, or the Thursday night win over the Jets, when he was going out of bounds and he saw Darrelle Revis and he planted his foot, lowered his head and went right to Revis, who pulled the matador and got right out of his way. Antonio Cromartie making a similar business decision later in the year when the Broncos played the Chargers. So there's not many special teamers running around out there who are 240, mostly muscle. So I don't feel too bad for Tim Tebow. They're trying to knock this, quote, pretty boy's block off. They might bite off a little more than they can chew in that situation. Anyway, it'll just be fascinating to see if this actually happens. Are they actually going to play this guy on special teams? And it just makes you reflect. I mean, if you know Tim Tebow's story, this guy transferred high schools. Transferred high schools because the high school he had played, his brother played, his dad filmed the games. I believe it was Trinity Christian in Jacksonville, if I'm not mistaken. Of course, I know he ended up playing most of his career at Nice, but he transferred to Nice specifically because his old coach, I believe it was at Trinity Christian, didn't want him to play quarterback, wanted him to play linebacker. So he sort of has I can prove you wrong, I can do this. And then, the rest is history. Went to Nice, set a state record for passing yards, state title, the whole 9 yards. Went off, won a Heisman at Florida, one of the most decorated college players in history. Yet still last year, you had people all in the national media saying, this guy can't do it, this guy can't play quarterback. He goes in, takes over a last-place 1-4 team, leads them on a winning streak, leads them to a win, and they won the division. They won a playoff game against the number 1 defense in the league, and he turned in a historic performance in that playoff game. He became the only player in NFL history to complete 5 passes of 30-plus yards and 3 passes of 50-plus yards in the same game. That's never been done before in NFL history. When you combine that with the fact it was against the number 1 defense in the league in the playoffs, you could call that game the greatest downfield passing game in the history of the NFL. So here's a guy who he thinks that he's again proved everybody wrong. Just like high school, just like college, he's proved all the Merrill Hodges of the world wrong by showing that not only can he play quarterback in the NFL, he can beat the best defense in the league in the playoffs. And now, due to circumstances totally out of his control, like Peyton Manning choosing to go to Denver to play, now he's thrown into a situation where not even his own team believes in him, believes he should be playing quarterback. So he hasn't faced this situation since Trinity Christian, or since he was in the 9th grade. The Jets are behind Mark Sanchez, their starting quarterback. They're talking about playing this guy on special teams. So obviously Tebow's much too classy to come out in the press and say anything about this. But wow, what a strange situation, he finds himself in. But, it's really a saga that the whole nation now is sort of obsessed with. Tebow is a huge story in this area, has been for 5 years. But he's now the most covered player in the entire NFL. So, for those of you who are tired of hearing about it or think, the story won't go away, tough luck. Better not watch much sports media for the next little while, because football season is just getting started. Anyway, about out of time. Before we get out of here, I want to mention the case. I know the Olympics are underway, even though the opening ceremony is still a couple days away. Still not sure how that works out. Anyway, a Greek triple jumper, Voula Papachristou. She was sent home from London back to Greece. She is not allowed to compete in the Olympics after issuing this tweet. With so many Africans in Greece, at least West Nile mosquitoes will be eating homemade food. Apparently that offended a whole number of people. Anyway, we're going to close the show with that.
This is Jeff Holland, Athletic.
We'll see you tomorrow at 4 for more of the Social Gambler Radio Hour.
You're listening to the home of the Yellow Jackets on ESPN.